We've got Harlan Crow, who refuses to turn over what gifts that he gave to Clarence Thomas to the United States Senate. We now know that he's been paying for the private tuition of an adopted child of Clarence Thomas. The man bought Clarence Thomas's mama's crib, and she ain't got to pay rent. He's been taking lavish trips with this billionaire. One website actually reported in a case dealing with Chevron that Clarence Thomas reversed his own decision in that case after getting all his money for Harlan Crow. It is building and building and building, Scott, this case against Clarence Thomas. And John Roberts refused to come before the United States Senate. These people are going to have to do something. This is an absolute massive ethics violation, conflict of interest. We now know that the Supreme Court, damn that, they cannot be allowed to police themselves. They are not, if we're going to talk about three branches of government, there is not a single branch of government other than them where they get to police themselves. These folks need to be under far more scrutiny, and they need to be having a hell of a lot more, frankly, ethics rules in place than even the executive branch or the legislative branch.
Yeah, the Supreme Court can't really be supreme if it's acting this badly. And the real danger with the Clarence Thomas situation, and it's not a Republican appointee or Democratic appointee, this ethics piece should cover all of them. And Roberts ought to come up with some ethical guidelines, and we ought to figure out whether the ABA or DOJ can police those guidelines. But here's the danger in Harlan Crow, though, because Harlan Crow may not have anything pending before the Supreme Court, but you don't know whose interest Harlan Crow is representing by disclosing, by giving these gifts and investing these monies and adding value to Clarence Thomas's life. And by the way, has Clarence Thomas reported these gifts or this income or any of these transactions on his taxes? That's the real question to ask, because whether he had to report them or not as part of some ethical review or document, which doesn't exist, has he reported on his taxes? And so Roberts has got to come up with something, because this is bringing disgrace on the Supreme Court. And if we can't believe, only 50% of Americans in some recent polling believe that the Supreme Court makes sense, or the Supreme Court is the supreme determiner of the law, and they have confidence in it. Now you're losing something worse on the democracy, because you got politics in the legislature and the executive branch, yeah, but this isn't a political branch of the government. This is supposed to be bigger, better, brighter, and uphold the law, because we follow the law, right? If we stop following the law, we have anarchy. And so this is a bigger problem for the Supreme Court. It's very credibility, which is the linchpin for our democracy. They got to get it fixed.
Well, go to my iPad. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, this is what he said. This is from a political story. He said, although Thomas neglected to report the gifts on his annual disclosure forms, Wyden argued they were substantial enough that Crow would have been obligated to report them on his annual gift tax returns to the IRS. Rebecca, I mean, and so this billionaire, oh yeah, I'm not answering y'all questions. Wyden's right. Nah, you don't get to just blow off a Senate committee just because you're rich.
You know, what's really interesting in this is not only does Harlan have to deal with the gift taxes, but Clarence Thomas might have to deal with the gift taxes on the receiving end as well. You know, I think Justice Roberts is in quite a quandary. I personally think that if this was just Clarence Thomas running amok ethically on the Supreme Court, they would have been cut Clarence Thomas, and, you know, Clarence Thomas would have been on his way out. I suspect that this is a larger issue on the Supreme Court. There are questions around Brett Kavanaugh and some of the debts that were paid off for him, and substantial debts, debts that his salary that he was making prior to joining the court simply didn't make sense, those that he could afford to personally pay off those debts. Those questions came up during the confirmation hearings. Those questions have lingered since he's been on the court. So I think Roberts is having a quandary here, because it may be more than just Thomas who have these ethical issues.
Bottom line, Robert, is look, you are unelected. You are appointed for life, you should have a greater level of scrutiny. And for him to say, oh, well, I just asked around, and it was, he sounded like, hey, do you think I could take this trip? Oh, I can? All right, cool. So a friend of mine said I could. What the hell? It's not like he even said he consulted with his attorney. He literally said, yeah, I just asked a friend. The friend was like, yeah, you can go ahead and do that, Clarence. Go ahead, bro.
It's amazing. For the first time in U.S. history, we have confirmation that Supreme Court justice has a sugar daddy. And I don't think that's something that any of us had to study in law school or really expected. This idea of having a Supreme Court justice get flued out like an Instagram thought is just not something within the realm of reality. When you think about the gravity of the cases that the Supreme Court is voting on, whether or not us having voting rights is dependent on if Clarence Thomas gets a trip to the Maldives, whether or not women have the right to reproduction dependent on if Clarence Mama's house gets paid off, whether or not we have prayer in schools dependent on whether or not Clarence Thomas' son gets his tuition paid. It's an insane system that we exist in. The reason I brought up Plato in the last segment is this goes at the very foundations of our democratic system. When you have a congressperson who apparently is living a fake life, but yet still is in Congress, we have a president who's a former president who's convicted of sexual abuse and defamation. And before that can even get out of the news cycle, we find out that we have a Supreme Court justice that is a gold digger. You know, all those things pile up to really question the democratic system that we exist within. And that's when you start seeing societies break from the just weight of the corruption of the system around them. And I think we may be near that breaking point.
Damn, Robert, IG thought, a gold digger. I mean, did you use all of the descriptions up? Hell, I thought you was about to say Harlan Crow gave him a gold card to Magic City. I mean, my goodness.
Look, there's nobody at Magic City getting flued out to the Maldives, their house paid for, and tuition for their grandbaby. Maybe at Claremont Lounge, but I'm just saying he's getting paid more than any IG thought that we know, and he gets to decide if we get to vote or not.
Damn, Robert sitting down by Clarence, can I get a table dance? Can I get a table dance? All right, folks, back to our Roland Mark Unfiltered video in just one moment. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.